I'm Paul Needham, retired Scheide librarian at Princeton University, where I worked for 22 years. I worked 8 years before that at Sotheby's, New York, in the book and manuscript department. 18 years before that at the Morgan Library in New York, and 1 year before that at the Huntington Library in California. I believe, although I'm not absolutely sure of this, I am probably the only person who taught Rare Book School its first year at Columbia in 1983 and is still teaching in 2022. Will Knoll and I will be giving our joint course on the 15th century book in about 2 months. I remember those early days pretty well, partly just from that kind of visceral memory of what Butler Library was like in the heat of the summer. Very hot building, not good air conditioning. It had a famously slow elevator. I think the slowness of the elevator has even been a plot point in certain novels, in one mystery novel in particular. I remember Terry Bellinger very well. The first year we were doing it, I was jointly teaching then. The course was spread out over 2 weeks at that time. I was jointly teaching with Felix Oyens, now long retired, living in France with his wife, a close friend of mine, then a book dealer in New York. And I remember we had a good class and a good time. He's one of the most learned people in the rare book world, really one of 3 or 4 people I've met that I can say that just my conversations, interactions with them changed my own way of thinking. I would say Felix, Eric White, my successor as Scheide librarian at Princeton, and Will Knoll, my now co-teacher and head of special collections at Princeton, they're all people that constant conversations with them changed both our ways of thinking about books. And Felix is extremely learned, rare book dealer. The other thing I remember is 2 different times. Once I was able to give my course on essentially an introduction to incunabula, once at the Huntington Library in February, and the Huntington in San Marino is just wonderful in February. The change from, winter in New York to Southern California, late February, was just superb. And I think David Zeidberg arranged that. It was just a pleasure beginning to end. I gave another course at the Morgan Library, and organized by George Fletcher, then my successor as curator of rare books there. And that was wonderful just because of the truly staggering collection of incunables at the Morgan Library. So basically, any great thing you wanted to show, you could just pull it out and there it would be right on the desk. The third big change was when I began teaching with Will Knoll. And that began when Will took the course in Virginia. And I think Will was the most kind of super hyper motivated student I encountered. And by the end of the course, we had just decided, wouldn't it be fun if we could do a course together? And it has been a great pleasure ever since, periodically to teach with Will. The course that Will Knoll and I give is called the 15th Century Book. And the whole idea of it is that in European bookmaking, this was a century of transition from writing books entirely by hand to printing them by a mechanical process of movable type, other technical innovations in the mass production of books, but that they remained books throughout, and in fact did not necessarily have radical changes in appearance, although the method of making them changed. So in my mind, if you're going to think about printing, you should start at the beginning, because more things happen in the first 10, 15, 20 years of printing than in, say, the next century and a half. More technical changes, more experiments in ways of doing things. And you should think very closely about the manuscript world, the world of handwritten books. When if you just said a book, you wouldn't say a manuscript book, because it was just a book. The book was made the way books are made, and that happened to be by handwriting and brushwork, illumination, painting, and so forth could be added to them. But to me, that's just the richest area. And of course, the handwritten book in the 15th century has a long tradition behind it, and the printed book of the 15th century has a long sequel ahead of it, century by century, until you get to really major technological changes in the 19th century. So for me, it's the natural thing to study. It's, if you want to think about books, why not start at that transitional stage? The Rare Book School, well, it has diversified its courses tremendously from the very beginning, which was a little more concentrated, but it's, it's really, the Rare Book School is the great achievement of Terry Bellinger, because he thought of it and he made it happen. Thinking of it and making it happen are two different things, and Terry has a strong, driven personality that leads to that wouldn't have happened with a committee, say. And the thing I think it's remained true to is Terry really wanted whatever course was being taught to find the best people to do it. And so it had a kind of an ethos of quality from the very beginning, and that really has maintained itself. The other aspect of Rare Book School that I realize so strongly now that I didn't at the very beginning, and that's because of its continuous development, is the tremendous strength of its own teaching collections. And, the teaching collections of Rare Book School now are essentially a rare book library. I am a big fan of Rare Book School. It started out as something relatively small, and who knew what it would become. And in fact, it really is quite extraordinary that it's going to be 40 years now, and that it's not just hanging on, it's thriving. And I think, as Terry would say, it's had many imitators. I think he could be eloquent about the fact that there have been many imitators, but there is, I do believe there's only one Rare Book School, which is sort of like the Harvard of rare book schools.